Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So I'm re-recording this video as my last video unfortunately didn't have sound. Very annoying. I have somehow managed to turn the microphone off. It's back on now. Now I'm also going to re-record this video as if it was yesterday. So some of what I'm going to say I would exaggerate further because I know what their handicap marks have done. But I'm going to talk about horses that ran at the weekend and whether I think this affected their chance at the Cheltenham Festival or not, whether it, it hindered it and suggested that actually they're definitely not going to win at the Cheltenham Festival, or whether I would think it's actually enhanced their chances of winning. So we're looking at horses that got beat. We're not going to look at the winners, we're only going to look at horses that got beat, starting off with Staffordshire Knot in the beginner's chase at Fairyhouse. Now, I've got this horse down for a handicap down the line. Obviously, that would be the 2.5 mile novice handicap. At the Cheltenham Festival. Being beaten comfortably by Impere Pass was a good result for that horse. I highlighted one a few weeks ago. I can't remember who it was. And it also finished second. That I'm looking out for handicaps. Now, hopefully Staffordshire Knot might even be stepped up next time into graded company, so that they can finish 4th or 5th and then run again in graded company 4th or 5th, end up in that novice handicap chase at the Cheltenham Festival. I think Staffordshire Knot will go quite nicely in that race. So this horse, in my opinion, has actually enhanced its chance of winning, because if it had won here, it would have got a too high a rating. It wouldn't be winning the Brown Advisory. It's a handicapper down the line. So I think this horse has enhanced his chance by finishing second. Moving on to the 11:53 Lavender Hill Mob. Now, this is an interesting one because I think this horse has enhanced his chance of winning at the Cheltenham Festival. But, crucially, not in the Triumph Hurdle, in the Boodles Juvenile Handicap Hurdle. So they clearly rate this horse. They think it's very, very good. They think it's better than their other horses that they've been running, such as East India Dock, the Ambient horses, and also OPEC. Now, I am tending to believe that they do think Lavender Hill Mob is very, very good. It's just not worked here. But because of that, I'm thinking they might now aim Lavender Hill Mob at the Juvenile, the Handicap, and East India Dock at the Triumph Hurdle. They're not going to want them both in the same race, but East India Dock has done what he needs to do. He's won a Juvenile Hurdle, he's won the trial, the grade 2 comfortably at Cheltenham, and yeah, they're going to be trying to split them up. So actually, by being beaten here, that it almost tells them that they've got to be aiming Lavender Hill Mob now at the Juvenile Hurdle and not the Triumph Hurdle, the Handicap Hurdle and not the Triumph Hurdle, which could, in my opinion, I think it actually enhances this horse's chance, because come Cheltenham, in that Triumph Hurdle, they were going to be up against the likes of India Dock, still Willie de Hooley, Charlas, Palladium. There's a few others that are still to come out, I'm sure. Willie Mullins still going to have another couple. Gordon Elliott's probably going to have a couple. And yeah, I think by being beaten here, this has enhanced his chance of winning at the Cheltenham Festival, but not in the race that I think most people were thinking the horse would turn up in. Moving on to the 12:40, the Peter O'Sullivan Handicap Chase, and I think the horse that I was looking out for Cheltenham here, Milos, has enhanced his chance of winning at the Cheltenham Festival. Why? Because he went so hard from the front. I think they knew he was going to fall into a hole, and he didn't fall that badly into the hole, but I think they were hoping for a drop in the handicap. We've got to remember that they had a couple of handicap winners last year in Langadan and Unexpected Party. Langadan hadn't won all season, and Unexpected Party had been beaten in his last 4 runs before coming into the Cheltenham Festival. Milos, I think, enhanced his chance of winning the Old Teamer, which is surely the race they're aiming at, by being comfortably beaten here, because he should get a handicap drop. Little spoiler, he did get a handicap drop. It was quite nice. That'll be in another video. Moving on to the 103, Zandabad being beaten in the French Furs Novices Hurdle. What did I think of that for the handicaps down the line? I think it's enhanced his chance. They have now demonstrated that they do get 2 mile 6, and they've let Skyjack, Hijack get the run of the race at the front. He's going to be very nicely handicapped, and it wouldn't surprise me if this horse could rack up a sequence when he goes handicapping again. At the Cheltenham Festival, if he turns up in something like the Coral Cup, I think he would go well. He probably needs to go up in the weight, so he might not quite fit this video because he's got to probably win a race first to get into the Coral Cup. And this race has probably not really enhanced his chance for Cheltenham, so to speak. Moving on to the 120, the horse that I was watching here, A Dream to Share, finished 5th. We've got to remember, A Dream to Share won the Cheltenham Champion Bumper, so has Cheltenham Festival form. And actually, I think he beat Factor File that year, didn't he? Very clearly, very good form. Now, A Dream to Share didn't jump amazingly on his hurdles debut, but I think this enhanced his chance of winning at the Cheltenham Festival rather than decreased it. If he had won this, he would have been going into graded races and have been looking at like the Supreme Novice. I don't think he's good enough for that. I don't think he jumped well enough for that. But if he'd won this, they would have been stepping him up in grade, very quickly. He would have then been running in all graded races, getting high handicap marks, and not being able to run in a handicap. For me, A Dream to Share being beaten here means they can target getting him into a handicap at the end at Cheltenham for the Cheltenham Festival. They've got to get a few runs into him. I think they need 4, don't they, to get him in to the Cheltenham Festival. But the county hurdle, I think, will be much easier for him than the Supreme Novice would have been. So I actually think he's enhanced his chance by being comfortably beaten here, because the handicapper, whatever he does the next couple of runs, they will have to include this disappointing effort, finishing 5th, into their equation. Moving on to the 154 at Newbury, the 2.5 mile handicap hurdle. The horse I was watching here with Cheltenham in mind was No Ordinary Joe. Obviously, he's run well before at Cheltenham. He's placed in a Greatwood. He's placed in a Martin Pipe. And he disappointed a little bit last time out, finishing 7th at the Cheltenham Festival. For me, by finishing 5th here, the handicapper's likely to leave him alone or drop him. And because of that, I think he's probably maybe enhanced his chance of winning at the Cheltenham Festival, because he's going to likely be lower than what he was rated last year. We know he runs well at Cheltenham. A little spoiler for this one, I actually think there's another race he should be targeted at instead. Fighting 5th, so the horse that we're talking about that got beat with Cheltenham in mind is Mystical Power. Now, Mystical Power was fancied for the Supreme Novice. Now, for the Champion Hurdle, having finished 2nd in the Supreme Novice last year. Other than that defeat in the Supreme Novice when he was outstayed because of the ground, he'd won everything else, and he'd beaten some nice horses by doing that. For me, you can completely ignore this race. This race is not a form line for Mystical Power. If you took Mystical Power out of that race, that's how you should assess that race, because Mystical Power is no way worse than the likes of Take No Chances, Tell Her the Name, Kiever, Lump Sum. He should have finished at least 2nd. He's clearly not run his race, so I'm gonna completely scrub this race off and say he's actually not done anything to his chance of winning the Champion Hurdle. I think what I'll be doing here is watching him next time when he goes to run, and if he's running in a Cheltenham Champion Hurdle trial race, so to speak, a grade 1 over 2 mile or a grade 2 over 2 mile, then I think they'll be saying, okay, we are still going for that Champion Hurdle. It does make sense to still go for the Champion Hurdle for me, because they was 2nd in the Supreme, getting outstayed. So why would they step him up in trip to the Stayers Hurdle? That doesn't make sense for me. Mystical Power, if it comes out in a grade 1 next time out over 2 mile, at that point I'll probably be having a little bet on him for the Champion Hurdle at the 25s or 33s that he currently is, because if he then wins that, he'll then come back into the correct price. If he loses, okay, we lost a small anti-post bet on him. But if he wins, he'll be, back to what he should be in terms of price. And that's, this is his only disappointing run. and it was only his second defeat in what 7, with all of the others being very impressive performances. So yeah, I don't think he's done any harm to his chance of winning a champion hurdle if you look at it from the way I've just looked at it. Moving on to the 225 at Newbury, the intermediate hurdle. The horse I was looking at here for Cheltenham was Aston Martini, who I have down as being a Martin Pipe or a Coral Cup horse. I think a Martin Pipe will suit more. I thought that effort behind Mai Tai was a very, very good performance. I thought this demonstrated that the horse didn't want 2 mile and the horse needed a lot further. Actually ran on quietly, quite nicely. Definitely wants to go back up in trip. Because of being well beaten here, it kind of enhances his chance, her chance, of winning at the Cheltenham Festival, because they're clearly, the connections surely have to look at that and go, we don't have the speed for 2 mile, so there's no point looking at the county hurdle. We need to be looking at the Coral Cup or the Martin Pipe, and the handicapper won't do anything in this race, despite it being a very strong race, in my opinion. I think this race will have multiple winners throughout the season, and Aston Martini can be one of those towards the end of the season, hopefully at the Cheltenham Festival. Moving on to Petit Tonnerre, who got well beaten over 2 mile, wants 2.5 mile. I keep saying this horse needs 2.5 mile. Can't keep up over 2 mile, really can't. Actually beat Imperial Saint this time, but there was more in front again. Can't keep up over 2 mile. I've got the 2.5 novice handicap chase at Cheltenham in mind for this horse. However, it will need to win a race to get in now. I kind of feel this hasn't affected his chance really for winning at Cheltenham. I don't think it's enhanced it, because it should have put him away from the Grand Annual. There's no point running in the Grand Annual, and you're not going to win that. But they might be able to get the horse into that 2.5 novice handicap chase. On to Sunday, and we start off with Willie Duel, however you say that horse. I'm not totally sure. Willie Duel. I actually think this was a negative performance for this horse. Negatively affected its chances of winning the Triumph Hurdle. Not affected its chances, but just demonstrated that it probably doesn't have the ability to win the Triumph Hurdle. I don't think it was that keen. I don't think he was that disadvantaged by how the race was run. I just don't think he was good enough to get away from Naturally Nimble, and Messerschmitt wasn't that far behind either. I just don't think he was good enough to get away from them. And yeah, there's going to be better juveniles, in my opinion, in that Triumph Hurdle. So I think this was a negative for the French named Willie Duel. Moving on to Romeo Coolio. Now, this is an interesting one, and I think there's a bit of an angle here. So I don't think he negatively affected his chances of winning at the Cheltenham Festival. However, you could argue it's actually increased his chance, because now they won't be looking at that Supreme Novice. He is not quick enough for the Supreme Novice. He might be quick enough for the 2.5, or he might even need further than that for the 3. A couple of things that we've got to take note of. He was beaten by our top-rated horse, who had performed a really high figure. So I wouldn't be, negatively looking at this race at all behind Tun Sibeta. Gordon Elliott does like to use Fairy House as his "do I want this trip" with a lot of his horses. Remember the Ballyburn got beat here. That's two things I'm mentioning at the same time. Who got beat here last year? Founder 50, before dropping back in trip. And if you go look back through and look at a lot of his horses that get beat at Fairy House, they generally then change trip. He almost uses this as a do we want this trip? No, we're dropped back, we go up. And Romeo Coolio is surely just going to go up in trip now to that 2.5 mile trip, which I think is what he's wanted anyway. So in my opinion, it's probably enhanced his chances of winning at the Cheltenham Festival, going up in trip, because now they won't be running him over 2 mile and being caught for a bit of speed. 205 at Firefox, same line with Gordon Elliott here. So this horse is dropping in trip, or will need to drop in trip, sorry. That, as I said, they did it with Founder 50 last year. He dropped in trip from 2.5 after being beaten here, down to 2 miles, and ran pretty well at the Cheltenham Festival. Firefox, I think, is better than Founder 50. And we'll definitely, I'm pretty confident we'll now drop back in trip for the 2 mile races and end up in the Champion Chase, in the Arkle, sorry. And I think he will take all of the beating in the Arkle. Firefox back in trip. So I think he's enhanced his chances because now they know exactly what to do with him. And finally, Teahupoo finishing second in the Hatton's Grace. What would I do here? I suggest this hasn't changed his chance of winning the Stayers Hurdle at all. It turned into a sprint. He's a 3 miler. Lossiemouth is a 2 miler. Got beat by speed. Didn't do anything to his chances at the Cheltenham Festival. So if you were thinking of backing Teahupoo, the fact that they then drifted him out because he got beat in a race that turned into be miles away from his right trip, a whole mile shorter than his correct trip or his preferred trip. So yeah, I wouldn't be knocking that performance at all from Teahupoo, and I would be saying that it has not affected his chance at all of winning at the Cheltenham Festival in the Stayers Hurdle.